Alrighty. Okie doke. There we go. So we
Awesome.
can go ahead and start this off. So tell me just a little bit about you, kind of what you're doing day to day, and just a little bit of like what you're doing at Butler.
Yeah, I gotcha. So my name is Jacob Valentine. I'm an alumni of Ball State University, sport administration program. Graduated in 2024. Came down to Butler University to be a part of their athletic department after graduation. So I've been here for roughly, call it 2 years. I spent my first year in the ticket office. So I was the ticket office assistant. So kind of just helping with day-to-day sales of single game season tickets and then kind of like group sales type stuff. um, so just getting the chance to connect with season ticket holders who are brand new or have had season tickets for 60 years, 50 years. It ranges. I've met a good decent crowd, young and old. Um, and so basically just kind of all customer service centered through the ticket office. And then after my year in the ticket office, I switched over to the event operation side. So that's where I'm at currently. So a little bit more behind the scenes work. I still, on game days, especially for men's basketball, I'm that front face that you see when you walk into Hinkle Fieldhouse. I'm a little bit more serious. I might crack a smile and be
Yeah.
like, welcome in, welcome to Hinkle. But I'm there kind of just making sure everything's run smoothly. But no, my general responsibilities is no matter if it's men's soccer, women's volleyball, men's basketball, or football. I'm there about 6 hours before an event starts. So I'm printing out timing sheets that I put together earlier in the week, making sure that locker rooms are set up for visiting team hours before they arrive, making sure the playing surfaces are clean. Like so for soccer, I'm out there putting the goals out by myself, or if I was lucky enough, one of my coworkers would join me. Setting up the bench areas, and then on game days for football, I'm setting up like Sky Coach Replay. If you're familiar with it, it's what the PFL league uses.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
and so setting that up, uh, setting up parking lot for sale, whether it's tailgating spots, single game parking spots, um, coordinating with the local police, Butler Police, and IUPD, or not IUPD, the Indianapolis Police. Just making sure everything's set and ready to go, opening gates on time, getting games started on time. That's the most favorite part. I say that with
Yeah.
quotations. It's pretty nerve wracking when you're sitting on the sideline with your hand up, and all the parents and all the coaches are staring at you because they're going, "Why can't we start the game?" And you got to wait till a specific time for TV to kick in and go, "All right, we're ready to go."
Exactly.
So I'm doing a thousand different things. I'm constantly on my feet. For football, I was averaging 30,000 steps, so all over the place. And um, if anything goes wrong, it's my responsibility to kind of address it and fix it. And especially if there's anything wrong with the visiting teams and the officials, that's kind of my duty is to interact with them and pass along information before the game days. And um, when they arrive, I'm the one who meets them there, takes them down to their locker room, kind of debriefs with them a little bit beforehand, gets them the stuff they need to do or need before a game and then after. So yeah, it's just kind of a quick rundown of a lot of things. But if you have any
Yeah.
questions about any specific thing, let me hear it. I'm willing to
So
answer.
sounds like there's plenty of things on the that you've been through just in the quick 2 years that you've been there.
Yeah.
So what are some of your favorite things you've been a part of, or like favorite things that you're doing on your day-to-day activities in either position or both positions that you've been in?
Yeah. I'd say my favorite thing is actually the kind of the customer service part of it with
Mhm.
our longtime season ticket holders. It's been pretty fun. I mean, I grew up in the Indianapolis area, and so being able to come back here after college and their first question when they first meet you is, "Oh, did you go to Butler?" And I was always like, "Well, I went to Ball State," which they usually follow up with, "Oh, we have no issues with Ball State. We're good there." But it's just the fact that I've gotten the chance to actually become friends with some of our season ticket holders, especially for men's basketball. And, you see them at everything. Like you'll see them at a women's volleyball game in the middle of October. and you'll see him at the very first football game in August, and you'll see him at a soccer game or two before it gets too cold outside, and
Yeah.
you see him at every single basketball game. So that's been really awesome. It's just getting a chance to meet them, learn a little bit more about them. A lot of them have deep ties to Butler as a university, and so it's been awesome to one hear the fact like the stories of how they went to Butler 50 years ago. They met their wife or their husband at Butler. They've played on the basketball team back when they were just first making the NCAA tournament. There is a season ticket holder who fits that story. His name is Mr. Krebs. He was on that. He was on that very first Butler team that made the NCAA tournament. If I remember, it's like way back in the '60s or something like that. Like
Yeah.
it's way back in the day. But so I've gotten a chance to hear him talk about that, and it's kind of been awesome to see the pride that they have in the university that they went to and continue to come back to. So that's probably my favorite part. A close second is just the behind the scenes stuff, especially moving into the ops like kind of area, reaching out to visiting teams, being in contact with their director of operations. I kind of more handled the responsibility for soccer, both men's and women's, and volleyball. With our both of our basketball teams being a part of the Big East, my two supervisors, Jacob and Wes, they kind of take control over basketball just because it's a higher level of production and there's a lot more moving parts and a lot more people involved. But so in the fall, I was the one reaching out to the officials, being like, "Hey, this is the time that this is kickoff time. If you could be here this amount of time before, if you have any questions or travel constraints, I mean, I even had to book hotels for them, making sure that they're taken care of a couple days or a couple days after the event happens. So it's been really kind of cool, and I've actually gotten to dive in a little bit more with women's basketball recently.
Yeah.
I had a good interaction with Northern Kentucky and their director of operations. I believe her name was Lindsay. I'm blanking on it, but I'll take a guess with that name. Um, but I was her point of contact. So when they were arriving for practice earlier in the day, when they were arriving for the game later in the evening, when their food arrived, when their departure was, all that stuff. And so just kind of getting the chance to meet the people from different universities that I didn't know existed or I've only ever seen on TV. Getting to see them come into Hinkle Fieldhouse or the Selleck Bowl, whatever venue we're playing in, and get to interact with their coaching staffs, their supporting staff, and the officials that come along as well. And it's actually kind of funny. You see a lot of the same faces from the official side. Like
Yeah.
you'll see them one game, and then 3 games later, it's the same crew. So you get the chance to kind of meet them and develop a relationship with them as well. So that stuff's pretty fun, on my side at least. So
Yeah, because I mean, like even like outside of like the sports ideology of it, you're still like you're just like building relationships with like strangers you may have like never met before if it wasn't for like these games and the position you've been put in.
oh yeah, I mean, and it's funny enough because it's basically all customer service. It's just being the ability to just talk to people.
Yeah,
And you get to start to pick up on people's different personalities as you go about it. And you also just kind of get to learn fun facts. Like we have an official for our women's basketball team. She's been there 2 times. She used to be part of the WWE, and like
really.
it's just one of those things where you're like, how do you go from the WWE to officiating women's basketball? But so
She
it's
was
kind of
she was officiating in the WWE.
no, no. She was like one of the rising stars in the WWE, and
That's
then
wild.
decided she didn't want to do it anymore, and then went into officiating for women's basketball. And so it's pretty crazy stuff. But yeah, no, it's just the ability to talk to people. And I know for me, getting out of college, it was tough at first because you're constantly on go. You're talking to so many people, um, and you kind of go, all right, I'm losing track of who's who and all that stuff. And you get caught up of like, should I reach out to this person? Should I not reach out to this person? But once you kind of get past the hump of like these are people, like there's a job, there's certain details that need to be passed between us and you know us and you, and we need to get information from you. It kind of starts flowing after that point, and kind of just becomes a natural feeling, which is nice. So
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess now that I've heard a little bit about you and what you're doing right now, let's take a little trip back in time a little bit. When
Okay.
you were coming out of school, since it's still somewhat fresh on your mind,
Yes.
what
Yeah.
were some of the things you wanted to do coming out of school? And then going into the job search process, what were some of like the difficulties you ran into in the job search process?
Yeah. Um, I'll be completely honest. When I was coming out of school, I mean, I think I mentioned this in my interview when I was originally applying for Butler. So Dr. Dalgety, my freshman or my sophomore year when I switched into the sport administration major, he had us do that Odyssey, like mapping out like realistically where do you see yourself in 5 years, and then what's your dream scenario in 5 years. And when I filled it out as a sophomore, I was like, honestly, I have no clue. Like, I don't really know. And then he had us do it our senior year. I think it was like the very last class that I took right before graduation. You know, he had us do it again, and it was just one of those things. As I filled it out, I could recall what I put down as a sophomore, but then I was like, honestly, the realistic 5 years from now, I'm not sure. Like, I'm not sure exactly what field I want to go into. Like, I know I want it to be sports related, and that actually is where my internship with the sports marketing up at Ball State and Kevin Mullaney. I know he's not there anymore.
Yeah.
But at the time, he was there, and that's who I reported to. He was the one that originally was like, "Hey, I know there's a position open for an assistant job at Butler. I know the guy who you'd be working under. I think it's a great kind of stepping off point, like graduation, first job, get you a good amount of experience at a high level university that has a very competitive basketball team." And so I trusted him. I trusted that the faith that he had in me to apply for that. And then luckily enough, I was able to get that job and move down here. Um, and so I kind of started piecing it together. You know, it was nice because I've kind of put it all together as I've gone along, if that makes sense. Like I had my summer with him in the marketing, got to pick up a couple skills in the marketing area, and was like, okay, this is cool. This I don't really enjoy. Let's see what ticketing's like. And then in my year in ticketing, I was able to go through and go, okay, I like this, this, and this. I find myself uh, being successful in these areas. And then there were other areas that I was like, do I want to continue to do this for the next X amount of years?
Yeah.
Um, and lucky enough for me, I actually met the two operation guys, Jacob and Wes. I became pretty close to them and their two assistants the year prior. Um, and so I nitpicked their brains, and I was like, okay, is this a job that you think I'd fit in well? And we had some pretty honest conversations about me switching over into the event operations side of things. And come the summer, I went through a high school baseball rental. I was in charge of that for the summer, and they were like, "Yeah, we'll hire you on. We guess like it's all right. Like I guess you've done your work." Um, and you know, I think I've kind of found my groove in the event operations side of things, and I think I'm pretty unique in that aspect. I think some people have an idea of what they want to do before they graduate. And some other people, you know, they go into something and they think it's what they want to do, and then they realize, I don't want any part of this. Me, I was kind of just like, hey, let's try it out. Let's try it out. You know, there's no issue with trying
Yeah.
and asking questions and getting the experience because it's in my mind, I was like, if I'm only here for a year, if I'm here for 2 years, if I'm here for the rest of my life, like if I'm here for the rest of my life, then awesome. Like it worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm getting experience from different sides of the coin, internal, external, um, behind the scenes stuff, being the face that everybody comes to when they have an issue with scanning their tickets. And so it's just been kind of fun for me. And the event operations has kind of piqued an interest more into capital projects, which is something that I am way down the road. That's way down the road. But I've started to kind of ask the questions about, okay, what does it take to build a facility and maintain a facility? And, you know, who are the people you need to know and how do I get there? And so it's been kind of a good gateway. And so for the foreseeable future for myself, the event operations side of things is what I'm going to continue down. And, you know, it took a long way to get here, but it works out in the end. So,
Yeah. I think that's kind of like the boat I'm in right now. I think like I walked into Ball State and like the sport ad program and super interested in going like the compliance and like agency law route. And
Yeah,
then as I kind of progressed through like year by year, I realized like that's a lot of schooling, that's a potential law degree as well. So then
yeah,
I think just like hitting like last year when I was hitting my junior year, I was like, I need to like start looking around and like trying other alternate paths to like kind of take a step in a different direction if that first
yeah,
direction doesn't necessarily work. So I think I've in that same boat have gathered little bits of experience through like classes and Ball State act like athletics and like activities through like sales and marketing and some probably event operations more than either of those, if I had to guess.
yeah,
That's probably where I have the most experience so far. So I think it's really speaks to what you said as well, because it's like just super important in getting out there and like trying all these different things. Because I mean, it's very common that the first thing you try, it's not going to be what you want to be doing for the rest of your life, like you said.
yeah,
You just kind of got to learn and like fit like what path like fits you the best and like what lane um to drive in. Because
yeah,
I know just it's harder to like switch those lanes later down the road. So I mean, while you've got that
yeah,
time, just like bounce back and forth, figure like what you want to be doing. That way you hit that groove, like you said, and you've got that spot you can be in for your further career and the future down the road.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
So let's see. I think now to kind of dive deeper into the management stuff for like what
yeah.
this class is about. So I know coming from the same program that I'm currently in, I'm sure you know your four functions of management pretty well. If you can
That's.
if you can recall them.
I would like to say I could. Um, I do not.
Okay. So I think
Refresh me.
we'll just go through them kind of one by one and then you can well, I'll go ahead and tell you all four and then we can kind of go through them one by one and just tell me how you fit in that like in your role right now.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be
So
perfect.
your four functions you've got planning, organizing, leading, and evaluating in that order.
Okay, okay.
So I think if you just want to go one by one, tell me a little bit about how you do each item and how those functions fit into your role at Butler right now.
Yeah, so the first one was planning, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, it actually fits in pretty well. So I'm in charge of our student workers. So I'm in charge of staffing them, making sure that they're getting to work on time, dressed appropriately for work, and they have their assigned responsibilities and an understanding of what they need to do. So a lot of planning actually goes into that beforehand. I need to plan out when I'm sending the reminder email of like, hey, you work at this time, please be here by this time, um, which you kind of get into a groove with. And then planning out not only like prior to the event of, working with that team. It's usually, I would say, anywhere from 2 to 6 student workers, depending on which sport we're working. Um, but planning out, going like, okay, so we have a soccer game today. We have 3 student workers, and we got to cover an entire soccer field with ball crew. So if I put my strongest student worker on the hill that I know if the ball gets kicked, it's going straight down that hill. I need somebody who's quick, who can get that ball, who's willing to run after it. I should be good in that corner. And then how do I want to place the other two? And do I need to insert myself? Is this one of those games where, actually, this as I'm talking about it, I was like, this is actually a great example. But it's like, it's easy when I have 6 student workers for a soccer game because there's almost a de facto, okay, I'm going to put one in each corner, have one roaming up and down this open sideline where the stands are. That way, if the ball gets kicked up in the stands, they can either run up in the stands or just catch the ball before it goes back into the field of play. And then I'll have one floater who's just kind of checking things upstairs, making sure fans are all right, making sure no trash is overflowing, that type of stuff. But if I'm short staffed, how am I going to do it?
Yeah.
And so kind of planning ahead. And I, when I first got into this role, I played with around with some ideas and I ran them past my boss, Wes. I was like, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing this. What are you like? What are your thoughts?" And he gave me a great piece of advice. He goes, "Make a decision and stick by it. And if it works out, it works out. And if it doesn't, then we'll talk about it afterwards." And I was like, "All right, perfect. Like, I got you." Um, and so, you know, building off of that, there was a game where it was just myself and one student for two soccer games. So we had our final men's soccer game against Creighton at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then that night at 7, our women's played their final game against Creighton. And my student worker and myself were the only ones who were available to manage the field. So I looked at him. I went, "All right, we're going to get our steps in. We might could do a little bit of running. You cover the north side of the field. I'll cover the south side of the field. And if you want to switch after the game, that's fine. Like we can switch it up a little bit." So kind of just being situate like aware of the situations that you're stepping into beforehand, whether that is the day ahead of time or day of. Sometimes it might be the day of, and just kind of have an idea of, okay, this situation I'm in. I've been here before. This is what has worked in the past, and maybe it needs to be adjusted. But if there's any issues, we'll address it after the fact. So, um, yeah, I hopefully that answers that well.
Yeah, just a
So
lot of like mental preparation going into it. I mean, you're not always, I think anybody in any sort of management position knows that like they're not always going to have all hands on deck. They're not always going to have everybody that they need to complete a specific job like to the best of its ability. So you just have to be able to adapt at all times and be able to know like what you can do with who and like how to be able to change things on the fly to make sure that everything's still running really smoothly.
exactly. And I'll actually add on to that. Something that I do for the planning stage of things is I have a checklist of whatever sport it is. I'll use the example I'm going to go with is women's basketball, so I'll go off of that. There's, let's say, 10 things I have to do before this time, like an hour when we open up gates for fans to come in. I have to have all that stuff done. So I usually plan out, okay, what can I do in quick succession? So, okay, I can go downstairs and I can set up visiting team coach's locker room, the visiting team locker room, and I can set up the officials locker room. Easy, quick and easy. Then I can go straight upstairs to the main court, get everything that's required out on the main court done. And I do that mostly because if something goes wrong, I have a buffer. And I try to do it quick. I do it to the best of my ability, but I try to get into a rhythm. That way I can give myself an extra 30 minutes before those gates open and we're on. That way, we had a time where I had everything set up, scores table set up. Everybody, we were about 5 minutes away from gates opening. And then our marketing team plugged in a fog machine to our scoreboard, and the whole thing turned off. It like short circuited the whole thing. And I looked at my supervisor, and he looked at me, and I was like, "This isn't good,"
That's
because
yeah.
it turned our not only the scores table off, it turned our scoreboard off because that's where it takes all the information from.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things where it's like, okay, well, I built in a time frame. I got everything else done, so there's nothing else to worry about. So now I can take all my energy and focus it on this one issue, and hopefully it's enough time to get it fixed. Which in that scenario it was, luckily. But yeah, just kind of always being prepared that way, and also giving yourself leeway. That way, if something does go wrong, you can respond and not have a freak out moment, that type of stuff. So
Yeah. So yeah, I think that example is honestly great because it's going to segue into the second function perfectly, which was organizing. And I mean, that's a great example of finding a way to keep yourself organized while also being able to organize what you have going on at the same time. So, I mean, if that example was great, if you have any other things you'd like to add on to that with the organizing function, it'd be awesome.
yeah, so to kind of add on to the man, organizing thing.
Yeah.
So we actually have an app called Trello.
Hmm.
And so we go through my other supervisor, Jacob, and myself. Funny enough, we have the same name, so it makes it easy for everybody to know who we are. But we actually go through and we go, okay, what's on this Trello? Do we need to do this anymore? Is this out of date? And we do that a couple weeks before like our first event for a season. So as we approach baseball, softball, and women's lacrosse, those are our spring sports at Butler. We're actually going to be evaluating those here shortly. So just being organized before the season even starts. But then I personally, there's a couple of things that need to happen during events. Whether we need to put tables on the South Concourse away after halftime, after the marketing team's done using them, or we need to go get this thing for the visiting team halfway through the game. I actually set myself reminders on my phone. And so I kind of they make fun of me just a little bit for it, but they'll see me talking to my phone because I'll go, hey, set a reminder for 15 minutes from now to go get this and take it to here.
Yeah.
That way I constantly have, I can forget it until that a reminder goes off and I can focus on what's in front of me. And then I can go, okay, I got to make time for this. I got to go do this. And I have it on my Apple Watch and I have it on my phone. And so it always keeps me engaged and it helps me not have any mental lapses during an event because, you know, for men's basketball, you could have anywhere from 4,000 people to 9,000 people at one time. And there's 1,000 things going on. You're keeping an eye out on the drunk student on the upper balcony. You're making sure that the visiting team coach isn't getting in it too with the refs. You're hoping, everything, nobody's letting anybody into the building that's not supposed to be in the building. So you're
Yeah.
constantly juggling. And so making sure to leave like those mental notes um, on my phone, it keeps me engaged and also helps me have a checklist as I go through an event going, okay, I got to do this at this point, and keep myself on top of things when I might get distracted from one thing to another in a matter of, 15 minutes. So just kind of helps out in a way.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, and I think going back to what you said with the whole planning thing about like um, dealing with who you have and what where you're going to be able to put them, that also ties into organizing because you're not only like organizing isn't just like keeping yourself organized, but it's also being able to organize like who you have and what they're going to be doing. That way, because I mean, like you kind of mentioned, being able to put like I know it's kind of cliche, but being able to put your aces in their places
Yeah,
definitely helps things run smoother for you because you can trust like everybody you have around you to be able to do like what they're supposed to be doing at like their top quality.
exactly. Yeah, no, you're spot on with that. Yeah, no, if you can get the right people in the right spots, it takes a lot of stress off, especially prior to the start of an event. So
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, what's the third step?
So the third and fourth we can kind of like group together because they definitely go hand in hand, kind of like the first two do.
Okay.
Just with leading and evaluating, because I know in specific managerial roles that I've been in the past, there's a lot of evaluating that goes on while you're leading.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that for you in your position.
Yeah. So, I'll start off with leading, just because I'm a try to be a person who leads by example. I when I was in college, I spent my time as a shift manager at Starbucks, and it was a lot of like, all right, it's me and two other people. We got a line out the door. Like, I gotta bust my butt in order to just get to closing. And sometimes I find myself in similar situations at Butler, and I deal with college age students from freshmen to seniors. And not saying that's a bad thing, but
Yeah.
sometimes the motivation lacks.
Yeah.
And so I try to make it a environment that they want to come in and partake in the responsibilities and the job that they've signed up for. And I think it's easier to create that environment by showing them how to do things and being like, hey, I'm doing it. I expect you to do it. And with me not being too far removed from their age group, it makes sometimes it's like, okay, like my boss is only 2, 3 years older than me. And, he's out here busting his butt, running between gates, helping people out, opening doors for people who might need it, taking those extra steps. And so I try to inspire them to do the same thing. And of course, it varies from student worker to student worker. there are a couple who you got to kind of nudge them a little bit and go, hey, I need you to do this in like the next 5 minutes. And you got to kind of draw a line at some point. But I try to make it as fun as possible. Have it have the job one be something that they enjoy, but also something that they feel confident in the ability to take control. Like if something goes wrong, like we have a guest services desk position for men's and women's basketball. And so I usually sit down with the student, whether it's their first time or it's their fifth or sixth time doing it. And I give them the rundown. I go, hey, this is where the important information is. I printed out a map of Hinkle Fieldhouse. So that way, if someone comes up to you and asks, hey, where's my seat? You can show them. And, I have a concessions map laid out. So if someone's wanting Chick-fil-A, you know exactly where it's at. And so I
Yeah.
try to, and we have these things called Ben's pretzels. Everybody wants a Ben's pretzels. You got to know where
Yes.
that information is. And so I try to equip them to be successful because I know what it's like to kind of be hang out and dry. You know, it's like, okay, it's not fun. It gives you a little panic sweat. Your heart raises and you're like, what do I do? I have no idea what you're asking me and how to answer it. Um, so if I can pass that information along to them, I think as a leader, I'm doing a fine job. And as long as they're doing their job the correct way,
Yeah.
there have been a couple points where it's like you got to look at them and go, "Hey, no, like we don't do it that way," or "You don't do that right now. We'll do it later," or that's just where, "Hey, that's unacceptable. We don't do that. Like we got to act professional. You're a representation of the university. You're a representation of the event operations staff." So myself and my two bosses, and it's like we got to tighten the ship up a little bit. And so making a fun environment, leading by example, passing the knowledge that is required to do the job well along, and then also drawing the line and correcting course if something is going wrong, or maybe a step was not being like, you don't be mean, bring the hammer down.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's necessary, sometimes it's not. Luckily, I have not ran into a situation where I've had to bring the hammer down. So take that as a good thing.
Yeah.
But, it's just being a leader can be a complicated thing in my experience, but it all boils down to communication and checking in and going, hey, something's wrong, please reach out to me. Like you have my cell phone number, you have my email. On the game days, we all have radios, so please reach out to me. And if there's an issue that you don't think you can address, I will come address it. And because my one of my supervisors, Jacob, his best line is, I get paid to get yelled at. And so, these student workers and, our other volunteers, they're not the ones who are getting paid to work for Butler. They're there basically volunteering their hours. And so, if someone's having a bad night and come into Hinkle and want to cuss out the first person they see, stepping in and being that person, because you don't want someone who's willing to show up and help you out, experience that and go, maybe I don't go back.
Yeah.
And then what was the evaluation? That was the fourth
So
part.
I think just a quick insert before we get into that. I think just going back to like I know in positions I've been in, like when I've been in the shoes of like one of those volunteers, I think it's very important to be put in that like trusted environment to where you've
Yeah,
got a leader that like is either has been in the same situation you're currently in or is like currently in a very similar situation with you because they're like you can be a leader but you also don't want people under you to look at you as like superior to them necessarily because I
yeah,
mean you want to be able to like provide that advice but you also don't want to like make these people under you feel like oh like he's better than I am like blah 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 you want to have that trusted environment to where it's not only like I'm trying to help you out, but it's also like you're building that relationship with those under you to make like the future activities go by so much smoother.
yeah, exactly. And I like to think of it as, there might be a team playing out on the court, but there's our team that's doing everything else.
100%.
And so
I definitely
it
like
might
that.
not be the traditional sense, but we're all part of the team and we all got to work together and we got to communicate with each other and help each other out in any way we can. So, but yeah,
Okay.
no, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we can quickly wrap this up with the evaluating side of things. I don't want to take too much of your time tonight, so you can just go ahead and quickly give me a gist on that, and we can get this finished up for you.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, no, evaluation. Honestly, I what I do is I take notes. I take notes. If I come across something during an event, whether it's something wrong with an object, like a door is broken, or I recognize this way is not working, or something might be wrong with a volunteer or student worker that I'm working with that night, I just jot down notes. And me and my two supervisors and our facilities crew, we actually do debriefs after games, and so we go over the notes that we all take, and we go, okay, what needs to be changed? Is this an issue that needs to be addressed? That needs to be looked at a little bit more. And so kind of just trying to stay on top of things. You don't want something to happen on, your game against Eastern Michigan and you go, oh, that was something that stood out and I think needs to be addressed. And then you completely forget about it. And then the same thing happens 3 weeks later when you're playing, Central Michigan. Like,
Absolutely.
you know, and so when it comes to the evaluation, just one evaluating myself, going, okay, can I do better? What can I get? Like, what do you guys need from me? Is there, and we've even asked, I mean, I've asked my student workers, like, hey, is there anything that stands out to you guys that I need to change or that I might need to pass along to Jacob or Wes, or maybe just in general? And we do the same thing with our volunteers for women's and men's basketball games. Um, and so, kind of just keeping that conversation, that two-way conversation open. That way we can look at them and go, hey, we noticed this from last game. Here's how we can change it and here's how we can address it. But then also taking the time to look at ourselves and go, okay, wasn't my proudest moment. I could probably have done better in this situation. So let me think about that. Let me have an honest conversation with my two bosses and let's figure out a plan of if a situation arises where we're all faced with a hard choice, like hopefully we can make a better choice.
Yeah.
Um, kind of, I don't blanking on a little like a good example, but just constantly it boils down to just having that two-way conversation and being able to look at
Yeah.
yourself in the mirror and go, okay, like did the problem stem from me? Can I make it better? Or even if things went completely fine that night, how can you even make it like how can you make it one step better? Um,
Yeah.
so
I
yeah,
definitely I definitely agree. I think a big thing about evaluation is just being able to like have that connection with yourself and those that you're working with as well. Because like the worst thing you can do when it comes to evaluation is like start pointing fingers. I mean,
yes,
even if that like you don't even like want to just blame yourself for something. You've got to get the insight from those under you, those around you, just to figure out like if something went wrong, what it came from, and then connect with those that like may have been the root of the problem and just let them know about it, give them the why behind it, and just let them know like what we can do down the road to make sure like it doesn't happen and that things go smoother the next time.
exactly. And it's important to know the severity of something.
Yeah.
Like I had a just a quick example and then we can wrap it up. I had a student worker, um, one of our earlier basketball games this season, get yelled at by a season ticket holder because something was wrong with his parking spot or something like that. And I was informed about it. I after the game went over and talked to that student worker. I was like, okay, run me through it. What happened? What they say? And is this something that you think I need to address? Like, do I need to go to the ticket office and go, hey, this is the person, like this is the tickets they sit in? And luckily, the student worker looked at me and goes, "It's no biggie. Like we're fine." Like
Yeah.
they weren't phased by it, and I was like, "It's okay. Like you can be honest with me." And they were like, "No." Like they were frustrated, and they told me like, "Hey, it's not your like you're just the person who I saw first. Like I know this isn't your fault. It's somebody else's fault." And so, you know, it's just kind of understanding because it's like if the student worker says it's fine and they truly believe it's fine, then it's like, okay, like we'll be good. Hopefully it's a one-time incident. But if it's something more severe, then the correct action needs to be taken to on our end, and then also reaching out to that season ticket holder and be like, we're employees, student workers are employees of Butler University, and you know, you don't treat another person like that, period. So, but yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. I appreciate every question that you were able to answer and even some of the side bits you were able to provide.
yeah,
Thankful for the time. No, it's a
yeah.
little late, probably a busy day before this, so I appreciate the taking the time to finish
Uh,
this. Um, Definitely look forward to hearing from you again soon.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
No,
and
always feel free to reach out. So reach out, ask any questions you want, especially as you approach the end of well, I guess the fall semester here soon for you, but also spring semester. So because as you're learning in class, I'm learning in my actual job experience, and so I'm always willing to pass on information. So always feel free to reach out to me. I mean, you have my email, and you can find me on LinkedIn and all that stuff. So it'll be good.
yeah, awesome. Yeah, definitely appreciate it. Hope you have a great rest of your night, and I'll definitely get in touch with you soon.
Awesome. All right. I look forward to it, and you too. All right.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. See ya.
Bye.